Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Ballabha Giridhari Gopi Jana
Saraswati Vyasam Tato Jayamudiriye. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, we should first offer our respectful obeisances to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Narayan, to Narayan Rishi, the supreme human being, Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, Srila Vyasadeva, the author, and to Srila Prabhupada, our spiritual master. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Gauravani Pacharya Nirvasesha Sunyavadi Bhaskacharya. So it's still chapter 17 in the first canto. We're on text 41. And this is the punishment and reward of Kali. And he's been negotiating. I mean, he surrenders and then he starts to negotiate with Parikshit about the terms of the surrender. Kind of an interesting beginning of quarreling, maybe, negotiating. So, Ataitani na sevata Athaitani na sevata Bubusu Purusha Kvachit Bubusu Purusha Kvachit Visheshato Dharma Silo Visheshato Dhamma Silo Raja Loka Patir Guru Raja Loka Patir Guru Athaitani na sevata Bubusu Purusha Kvachit Visheshato Dhamma Silo Raja Loka Patir Guru Athaitani na sevata Bubusu Purusha Kvachit Visheshato Dhamma Silo Raja Loka Patir Guru Someone else?
Athaitani na sevata Bubusu Purusha Kvachit Visheshato Dhamma Silo Raja Loka Patir Guru
Athaitani na seveta Bubushu Purusha Kvachit Visheshato Dharmasilo Raja Loka Patir Guru
Athaitani na sevata Bubushu Purusha Kvachit Visheshato Dharmasilo Raja Loka Patir Guru
Athaitani na seveta Bubusu Purusha Kvachit Visheshato Dhammasilo Raja Loka Patir Guru
Athaitani na sevata Bubusu Purusha Kvachit Visheshato Dhamma Silo
Raja Loka Patir Guru. Okay, so I'll do the word for word. Atha, therefore. Itani, all these. Na, never. Sevata, come in contact. Bubusu, those who desire well-being. Purusha, person. Kvachit, in any circumstances. Visheshata, specifically. Dhammasila, those who are on the progressive path of liberation. Raja, the king. Lokapati, public leader. Guru, the brahmanas and the sannyasis. So now I'll say and then you repeat, okay? Therefore, whoever desires progressive well-being, especially kings, religionists, public leaders, brahmanas, and sannyasis,
public leaders,
brahmanas, and sannyasis should never come in contact with the four above mentioned irreligious principles.
with the four above mentioned irreligious principles.
So, the verse again is, therefore, whoever desires progressive well-being, especially kings, religionists, public leaders, brahmanas, and sannyasis, should never come in contact with the four above mentioned irreligious principles. So, then we have the purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The brahmanas are the religious preceptors of all other castes, and the sannyasis are the spiritual masters for all the castes and orders of society. So also are the king and the public leaders who are responsible for the material welfare of all people. The progressive religionists and those who are responsible human beings are those who do not want to spoil their valuable human lives. Excuse me, let me read that again. The progressive religionists and those who are responsible human beings, or those who do not want to spoil their valuable human lives, should refrain from all principles of irreligiosity, especially illicit connection with women. If a brahmana is not truthful, all his claims as a brahmana at once become null and void. If a sannyasi is illicitly connected with women, all his claims as a sannyasi at once become false. Similarly, if the king and the public leader are unnecessarily proud or habituated to drinking and smoking, certainly they become disqualified to discharge public welfare activities. Truthfulness is the basic principle for all religions. The four leaders of the human society, namely the sannyasis, the brahmanas, the king, and the public leader, must be tested crucially by their character and qualification. Before one can be accepted as a spiritual or material master of society, he must be tested by the above-mentioned criteria of character. Such public leaders may be less qualified in academic qualifications, but it is necessary primarily that they be free from the contamination of the four disqualifications, namely gambling, drinking, prostitution, and animal slaughter. So, and those, of course, are the four above-mentioned principles that Prabhu, or that, who's speaking again, Sutta Goswami, or is it? Sutta Goswami, that he mentions here in the verse that, therefore, whoever desires progressive well-being, especially kings, religionists, public leaders, brahmanas, and sannyasis, should never come in contact with the four above-mentioned irreligious principles. So, not to lose the train of thought, I forgot to introduce our guest, Chaitanya Chandra. He's stalwart devotee from the Dallas Mandir, Kalachandri, Radha Kalachandri there, and beautiful restaurant, which you managed it for a while, didn't you? Yeah. And he has a very interesting pastime with Brahmananda and Prabhupada, which I'll let him talk about it tomorrow if you want.
And my wife is here also, Nila Madhava.
Jai Hare Krishna. And they're passing through, and they're still considering retiring here, so...
Everybody should be.
I always consider it.
So, yeah. His son actually said that he really would prefer living here, but that's another... he came for a visit. So anyway, I guess I should be truthful. Instead of, but that's partially true. Anyway, so this is a very interesting verse, and the whole context. But I really like this last sentence: the public leaders may be less qualified in academic qualifications, but it is necessary primarily that they be free from the contaminations of the four disqualifications, namely gambling, drinking, prostitution, and animal slaughter. But I wanted to speak a little bit. I was listening to an older godbrother who's coming here in January, so I thought I'd listen to some of his classes, and his name is Suresh Prabhu Very ecstatic devotee. So, what?
Isn't it Sureshwar?
Yeah, that's correct. Sureshwar. I was testing to see if you were paying attention. And you passed. He was making this point. It's where it sounds correct in terms of historic, but he was saying that, well, first of all, let's backtrack. Many of us have heard Srila Prabhupada say that when I thought to come to America to preach, that you should give up chasing women or having illicit sex, and give up intoxication, give up eating animals, and give up your gambling habits, and take to just chanting Hare Krishna, Hare Rama. It's impossible. Why are they going to listen to me? I'm an old man from a very poor country. I have no money, no qualification. Prabhupada was speaking very humbly, but being old, at least his body was old, and being from a poor country, in some sense, externally it may appear that way, but actually India is extremely rich in knowledge. And that's always been true. Even as growing up as a child, I remember thinking that India is a really important place spiritually. I remember seeing a movie that was based on a book written by Somerset Maugham called The Razor's Edge, where the person in the main character in the story is coming back from World War I, and a friend took a bullet for him, and that person died on the battlefield, and he was saved. And this had a major impact on the main character, and he wanted to understand what's going on here? Why does one person live, another person dies? What is death? He started asking actual questions that a human being should ask. And this was a novel that was written by an English novelist, Somerset Maugham, and it was made into a movie, a beautiful movie. I think it came out in the late 40s. And it's coming back to the 1920s America, where it's like, the roaring 20s, and everybody's really feeling like there's nothing to hold us back. Everyone's investing in Wall Street, and they're right on the edge of a major financial disaster, but there's a boom going on. So they're all really enjoying and trying to entice him to be a part of this new American prosperity. And he wants to find out. He wants to find truth. He wants to find knowledge. And he goes, ultimately, after many things, I don't want to tell the whole story, but the point is, ultimately, he's advised to go to India. And there he meets a guru. So, even back then, people were thinking, India, yes, India is a place where there's knowledge, spiritual knowledge. And so, back to this particular verse. So, Prabhupada, when he came here, he was thinking, when he thought like this is impossible. I remember he actually said that in the Atlanta temple on Bhaktisiddhanta's appearance day. And he said it many times, but the way he said it was, when I thought like this, I thought, this is impossible. How will I get them to take to this chanting and give up all these things? Why won't they listen to me? And he had the prior experience of his godbrothers who had tried to go to Europe. Bhaktisiddhanta Prabhupada was constantly trying to spread the movement to the West. His father, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, sent the teachings of Lord Chaitanya, the precepts, to McGill University. Some devotees have found it. And they wanted to reach the West because the prediction is every town and village. And they wanted to fulfill that mission. So, but his godbrothers didn't have any success. There was one English gentleman, and he was what was his title? Marquis de Jetland, something. He was some kind of lord. And he asked Prabhupada's God brother, can you make me a Brahmin? And he said, sure. All you have to do is give up illicit sex life, you have to give up intoxication, you have to give up meat eating, and you have to give up gambling. And he went, well, that's impossible. Impossible. How can I do that? So, Prabhupada's strategy was a little different, according to Sureshwara's Prabhu's, and it's actually, historically, it makes sense. He said, because there's a verse by Rupa Goswami, I can't remember the Shastra or the Sanskrit, which particular book, but he says that, first of all, you have to give them a taste, a higher taste of the chanting. So in the beginning, Prabhupada actually had 2 or possibly 3 initiations, and the 4 rules and regulations were never mentioned. It wasn't till the exact date is known, November 24th, a young man by the name of Wali, whose initiated name was Umapati, he went up to Swamiji and asked, so are there any rules at this club or this group? Little did they know that this was a mission, and it was actually part of an international society in this little storefront in the Lower East Side of New York. And there was just a bunch of guys, and there was one Mataji, Jadharani Prabhu. You all have Jadharani to thank because her persistence, Prabhupada in the beginning was not thinking about, there was no such thing as brahmachari. You either were married, or there was no single women approaching gurus in the Gaudiya Math. And so, but Jadharani, and Prabhupada realized, I'm in the West, I have to make some adjustments here. So, when Wali, or Umapati Prabhu, asked that question, he's in Maharaj, I think now, and I said, yes, this is a very good question. And on the next day, and there's a document that's actually dated November 25th, 1966, and he posted this document that said, for those who are initiated disciples, the following things should be avoided. And then he lists illicit sex life, intoxication, meat eating, gambling, and then there's a little addendum that mentions, frivolous sportive activities and not becoming too intimate with non-devotees. And there's actually some temples that actually have that document, a copy of it posted. And so Prabhupada's idea was that first you give them a taste for the chant, based on Rupa Vilas. I looked at you and I thought Dallas and I thought Rupa Vilas. I don't know why, but because of the school or something. But Rupa Goswami's his idea was first you give a taste, you get them to have the higher taste, and then things will become. It's easier to give up. It's called positive renunciation. So this was Prabhupada's approach to this impossible endeavor, and it worked. So now, though, it's the next stage after developing that higher taste, and then and understanding what is our responsibilities as disciples of a bona fide spiritual master. The next stage is that we have to share it. We have to distribute it. Because here it says that the leaders of society should be educated in these 4 principles. And there's been many attempts. And first of all, we ourselves have to become first class. And I remember twice I was in a room when Prabhupada made this statement, but once it was in Mayapur in 1975, and it was one of the first really large Mayapur festival. And he said, now there is one guru, one shiksha, one diksha. then there'll be 10, then 100, then I want all of you, all my disciples to be gurus. And for years I pondered on what that meant. And more recently, and after studying this verse and listening to some classes, I was thinking, really what it means is every level of society. It isn't just sannyasi, it isn't just Brahmin, it isn't just a Kshatriya leader or a public leader. It isn't just, it's anyone who's a parent. The Rishabh Dev says that you should not become a mother or a father unless you're qualified to liberate your child. That means even a Sudra is a guru, if you're going by the externals. Because we're trying to become Vaishnavas, but being a Vaishnava is not, we throw that banter around very, but it's not such an easy thing to become a Vaishnava. And so we're begging and hoping that someday we can be qualified to be called a Vaishnava, and to be actually able to follow the principles with such a pure heart and not see these things externally. I mean, in order to be, like it says here, that last sentence, that you don't necessarily have to be very academically qualified, because we know what is real knowledge. We have, first of all, the verse in the Bhagavad Gita, Pandita Samadarshana, that a learned man who sees and knows the truth, he sees a dog and a dog eater, a Brahmin, and he sees all living entities with an equal eye, with an equal vision. And there's that beautiful painting in the Bhagavad Gita where you see the Brahman or the devotee is standing there and he's seeing the Paramatma and the soul within every living entity. All living entities, the trees, everyone is a part. There's where Prabhupada was walking into the Mayapur Dham, and he noticed one of the banana trees was not properly watered. And he told Bhavananda, you're in charge of this place. You have to make sure that all the project, everyone on the property is being properly nourished. That tree needs to be watered. Is it a tree or a plant for a banana?
It's an herb.
An herb?
An herbaceous, it's not a tree.
Okay. So, it's an herb, banana. I hadn't heard that before. But
they used the word herbaceous plant.
Herbaceous, okay.
Herbaceous plant.
So the point is that all living entities are equally important in the eyes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and a learned person sees everyone equally. And we have also, Chanakya Pandit was not a Vaishnava, but he was a Brahmavadi, and he was truly living. He was, walking the talk. He lived in a very simple hut. He was an advisor to a famous king, I think his last name, Gupta, something Gupta. Chandragupta, right. And his instruction is to see all women other than your wife as a mother, to see anyone's possession, anything in the street, anywhere, as just stone or just trash, not to consider like this is valuable. You see all other possessions that's not yours as trash or not necessary. And you see everyone equally, the golden rule, you do unto others as you would have them do unto you. That is real knowledge. Despite whatever degree or how much training you've had in other fields, real knowledge is to have those qualities and to actually, and you, even like in the Ten Commandments, it says, you should honor thy father and thy mother. The father and the mother, they're gurus. That was my point. I was saying, Prabhupada said, I want all of my disciples to be guru. Well, everyone is a guru in the sense that if you're a good disciple, a bona fide guru is a bona fide disciple. And a bona fide disciple means that you're following those principles, and the only way you can follow those principles is if you're chanting the minimum 16 rounds, really trying to hear them nicely, chanting them congregationally, and studying and reading regularly the Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita and any other books that Prabhupada has translated. Other books are nice also, but specifically the Srimad Bhagavatam is recommended, and Bhagavad Gita as it is. So those things, that's the higher taste. That's where we get the nectar. Of course, Krishna Prasadam, coming to see the deities in the morning, chanting together congregationally, observing the important festivals. This is a science. We can't minimize the science in the name of some service. The service, is, because it actually, in the verse that I was referring to, that Prabhupada based this idea on, by Rupa Goswami, is that Rupa Goswami says that if one develops the taste of chanting the holy name and hearing about the Supreme Personality of Godhead, all the other regulative principles follow like maidservants. It becomes natural. It's not a problem. It's not a struggle. Like, I want to do this other thing. No, there's no. It's a natural thing. It's not unnatural. Prabhupada, I love this expression that Prabhupada would use, that this Krishna conscious movement, or Krishna consciousness itself, is not an artificial imposition on the mind. It is who we are. We are Krishna conscious entities who are covered over by the inferior energy. And we're becoming gradually uncovered. And there's various stages. And we have to constantly be endeavoring to try to understand our position. There's another verse by Sanatana Goswami that says that you can take a base metal, if you know the right chemistry or alchemy, and turn it into gold. Similarly, this Hare Krishna mantra can take meleches and very fallen, even dog eaters, and turn them into first class transcendentalists. And Prabhupada has done that. He's doing it now, He's continuing to do it. And as we were discussing on the disappearance day, that this is just the tip of the iceberg. We've yet to see the full impact of Srila Prabhupada and what he's given to the world. This will go on for 10,000 years. And we have to realize that our responsibility now of how to set the proper foundation so that future generations will understand the importance of the founder Acharya, Srila Prabhupada, and not get caught up in other side issues. That we risk, just like with the example of Ramanujacharya and Madhvacharya, they continued for 1,000 years. Our movement will continue for 10,000 years, or 9,500 years. It will continue that way. That is the prophecy. But we have a responsibility now. We must understand what those responsibilities are. And part of that is to, pass on the legacy of Srila Prabhupada, be good stewards of this process. Everyone, all the teachings, all the religious teachings, talk about, like in the Bible and the Old Testament, it talks about, I give you domain over this world. And it says, I give you the fruit bearing seed, and that shall be your meat. He's giving you domain, stewardship. They're all giving, God is giving us a responsibility to protect everyone in this material world, who's fallen into this material world. And if we've been given the gift of this knowledge, then we have a greater responsibility to take care of this material nature and to take care of the spirit souls who are trapped in it, to help them find a progressive path back home, back to Godhead. We should be constantly walking in prayer. And because every desire is a prayer, we should think in prayer and learn how to desire, learn how to pray by reading those prayers of the great devotees. Prabhupada said, you don't know how to pray, you should learn prayer from the great acharyas. Akura, of course, is the one, I think, who attained perfection through prayer. But there's so many beautiful prayers by so many devotees, great devotees. Bhaktivinoda has a very beautiful analysis of surrender, Saranagati. This is a very beautiful analysis. And by studying these prayers, learning how to desire, we can learn how to associate with one another, and we can learn how to distribute. I'll give you an example of an attempt once, just quickly. Back in the 70s, Balavanta Prabhu and Amarendra, Amarendra was first, and he ran for some, I don't know if he ran for a state house representative in Florida, or was it U.S. But in any case, this was around 1972. That inspired Balavanta, and before Balavanta, everyone knows the stories about Balavanta running for mayor. But actually, before he ran for mayor, he ran for a House representative. He wanted to be, a state congressman. And so we're at a debate, and one of the candidates said, and I stayed up all night, and I had a fifth of Jack Daniels, and I had my typewriter, and I wrote that bill, and I drank that fifth of Jack Daniels, and I got that bill written. So Bhagavatam says, well, Mr. So-and-so, I'm so glad you got the bill written, but I don't know if writing it under the influence of Jack Daniels necessarily qualifies it for being a sober legislation. I would get the bill written without, I wouldn't procrastinate. If you elect me, I won't procrastinate. I won't have to wait till the last minute to get it written, and I certainly won't write it under the influence of intoxication. And the guy was like this big. Then there's the story of, so because we were attempting to preach in higher circles, and the more you started to think, well, now we're going to, instead of just talking to the average Joe in the street, you're going to be talking to some leaders, you realize they're even more degraded, or even more like the library party, in their attempts to distribute books to the professors. And many of the professors, I mean, they did fantastic service, but many of the professors are the most degraded people, and they're supposed to be the leaders and set good examples. But they are similar to the preachers who say, do as I say, but not as I do. Because they like to sit around, armchair philosophers, armchair religionists, but not actually practice it. I mean, there's that one story where a man comes in, a professor, I think in Philadelphia, and Rabindra Prabhu brings him to meet Prabhupada, and he's a teacher of Hinduism, and Prabhupada asks him, well, what is Hinduism? He said, well, I don't know. And you don't know? And he turns to Sri Damodar. He says he's a professor of Hinduism, but he doesn't know what it is. What would you call that? And he's asking Sri Damodar, and Sri Damodar says, he's a cheater. And the man's like, that's squirming. So did you hear that? Sri Damodar says that you're a cheater. Anyway, it's a very interesting story. And but this is the quality of people that we're dealing with, and so to understand. Right now, we're surrounded by Kali Yuga. Everyone in this age is addicted to these four sinful activities, and we have to present a positive alternative. We have to strain our brains to come up with ways and means to attract them and give them the higher taste. I mean, they may all come out of, there's 4 different ways that people come. And one of them is out of distress. And things may become more distressful, and we should be prepared for that as well. But we should also be thinking about how to attract them in a way like Srila Prabhupada first got them addicted to chanting Hare Krishna. That was the new addiction. And they felt it. They felt it was much more satisfying than doing their intoxication. They felt they gave up their smoking. They gave up their intoxication. And gradually, the movement expanded like that. So we're very grateful to Srila Prabhupada for giving us these literatures and for giving us this understanding of what is this material world and what is proper human behavior. And for giving us this mantra, this Hare Krishna mantra. Anyone have anything they'd like to add? Yes.
I had a similar realization you had when you were talking about that when I was thinking about Srila Prabhupada's disappearance. And the quote there about being a responsible human, also along with a whole list of different other people there. But my realization was that because I'm doing some little tiny activities in El Paso and trying to establish that we start getting going on home programs like the Bhakti Vriksha type thing, where everybody starts to take responsibility and start cultivating their friends. And so then I got this realization that, all the devotees who are gurus, because Lord Chaitanya said, become a guru. It's not that we're all supposed to become a sannyasi, who's the guru of the society, but guru in the sense that be responsible and try to teach others how to chant Hare Krishna and read Prabhupada's books. There's all these different groups around the world that are successful at people becoming devotees. They're all kind of centered around spending time reading Prabhupada's books and chanting japa and kirtan. And so to kind of, so everybody actually is a guru in the sense that we take responsibility for somehow or other what Lord Chaitanya wanted us to do. Everybody become guru. How is that applicable?
Yeah.
It has to be applicable.
Right.
Otherwise he wouldn't have said it.
Right.
So I thought, let's, we can at least at our own homes be the gurus in our homes.
Yeah.
And try and, do some home programs or whatever, something.
Yeah.
Start somewhere.
We don't have to imitate, the great, like even Srila Prabhupada, the way he started, he didn't come off like he's a big guru. He was washing the pots. After they did the first fire yoga and initiation, they all left, and he was left. First of all, he did the setup, and then he had to do the cleanup. They left him there. It wasn't like he came, I'm a big guru, and I'm big. He started, then gradually, they started having realizations by performing and having a taste. Then they wanted to serve. How can I serve you more? So Kesar Mapati was asking, well, are there any rules? Well, that's a good question. And it grew. And then the story about Govinda Dasi finding out that Swamiji is not a high first class. So slowly things. And when I first joined, there was no Guru Puja. We did a greeting of the deities. And the temple president, we would do this thing. Most temples did this thing. Prabhupada is coming, Prabhupada's coming. And then we pretend that a door was opening and closing where Prabhupada would be staying. And the temple president comes walking in with Prabhupada. And then they walk up to the front and then open the curtains. And there would be all this frankincense and myrrh come out from behind the curtain. Then Govindam prayers. And then we'd offer flowers to Prabhupada and paid obeisances. Some temples, what we did is Samsara Dava, and then I remember doing it with Vishnu John Swami, where we'd sing, after the greeting of the deities, we'd sing, I'd sing a verse of Samsara Dava, and then I'd do the English translation, would say it. then you'd do Maha, Prabhu, Kiran, and then you'd do the English translation. And we'd all do it like that, and then go to Bhagavatam class. Then around 1973 or 4, it slowly started from India, I think. And then Prabhupada said, yes, you should do this every day. You should do an artik and sing Sri Guru Charana Padma. It slowly, gradually. Prabhupada never just came and said, I'm a guru, I sit up here, I'm a big seat. It was a gradual evolution. And so, but for also, how is everyone to be a guru? To be a guru, just take care of your family. Take care of your friends. But by the way, in El Paso, there's a very nice couple from Tuscaloosa. They're from Nepal. And they moved there less than a year ago. He's a geologist. And I'm sure they're looking for association. They had a really nice program in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. They used to come here for our John Masmi, and I can give you their...
Are you sure they moved to El Paso? I thought they moved to Midway or something like that, up around Waco or something.
Maybe it was Waco, yeah.
What are their names?
Rohini's his name.
Rohini Kumar, and then, no, and what? Anjana, right, Anjana. And, but I have their cell numbers, and I don't think they've changed it. So I'll try to call them and see if there were, yeah. I knew it was somewhere out there in the middle of nowhere. Well, Waco though, no, it wouldn't be Waco because that's between...
It wasn't Waco, but it was in that area.
I thought it was further
West
out.
Texas.
Yeah, I thought it was more in West Texas.
We'll call, find out, yeah.
I
I'll
thought I
call.
gave them Chaitanya's information, and they did say there was another devotee in the town. I remember them telling me that.
They're really not, they used to regularly organize a program for Janamasmi in coordination with some other their disciples, Jayapataka Maharaj, and this Radhanath disciple in Birmingham, and they would do a program together, and they had a lot of PhD students and postdoc students chanting 16 rounds, and they would have a Janamasmi celebration. They still did. They did it last, but they weren't there last year. Someone else did it. But they would definitely like to have association. I'm sure. But I'm not sure. Maybe now I don't. Maybe it wasn't El Paso. I just kept thinking it's way out there, out west, and I immediately assumed it was El Paso, but I could be wrong.
What's the name again?
Anjana, and Rohini, something. I always forget people's names.
The Anjana,
Anjana.
that wasn't her initiated name, was it? Or was that her initiated name?
I think it was. I think Maharaj kept it the same but slightly different. Or added something. But you don't have a Rohini?
No, it's always her.
Anjana was the one.
Then she WhatsApps me, and I got it on here, but I can't find it.
Okay. Well, I know
It may go by her legal name. I can't remember it.
Well, I'll try to call them today, and then you're going to be here. Where you're going to stay in the trailer? So I can just come over and if I get through to them, I'll give you their number.
There was another devotee friend that just moved in the Dallas area that lived in Jackson for a number of years. I think I gave her information to a devotee from Dallas who was doing a Bhakti Vriksha in the same town. He happened to be here right when they were moving. I can't remember who that is either, but the town was Frisco.
One of the suburbs, so.
Yeah, I have her name is Anjana Gopika, her initiated name, and I have her cell number.
Oh, good. Maybe you could just give it to...
I was just going to say also that about the idea of spreading Krishna consciousness by coming together, that and everyone is a guru, that my Guru Maharaj is probably everybody knows he's the minister of congregational preaching. So he's developed this Bhakti Vriksha format for the last decades, and it's the face of ISKCON is that it's really congregational people. It's so, I mean, initially when Prabhu came, it's like, even when I joined in 1981, it's like you really couldn't be a devotee unless you just moved into the temple. And then when Prabhupada went to India, then the people there weren't so ready to take up sadhana bhakti and that kind of practice, but then he invented the life membership program, just, you know, to engage them. But now the congregational preaching is really like what's happening, and the motto of that is each one teach one. And so it's really, you know, like Shiksha gurus and, you know, facilitating people to like really come to Krishna consciousness, and so many initiated devotees come from that program.
Yeah.
And there's a whole format. You're probably familiar with all that.
We have a whole bunch of
I'm sorry.
bhakti diksha program in Dallas. This going.
Yeah, it's a certain format that's been really successful.
Yeah.
So nice that you're doing that, rather than just, oh, like, I'm getting older now, I'm just going to relax. No, I'm getting older, I'm going to preach more, like that. So inspiring.
Oh,
Yeah, we'll find out exactly where they are. Because I'm sure they're, I know that they listen to a Bhagavad Gita class almost every day online. I'm not online, like it's a conference call. And they're always, I haven't heard from them in about a couple of months, so.
And do you know Nagaraj is in Amsterdam now? He went to Indianapolis, and then just within the last few months they moved to Amsterdam.
Really?
But they connected with devotees right away, and they're doing well and happy.
it is Midland, Texas.
Midland.
I found it. She wasn't communicating with me on WhatsApp. It was Facebook message, and she goes by the name Anju there, and then she has a last name Dipball or something like that.
That's a brother that we found is in the middle.
Yeah, she mentioned that there was somebody there.
So where's Midland?
It's right in between Dallas and El Paso. It's like the big oil area.
Yeah.
In Odessa, it's the big oil capital of Texas.